Today we're looking at a 5.3 liter VVT GM engine, variable valve timing, and one of the valves sounds like it's collapsed. So we're going to check it out. I've taken out 4 of them already. I got one more to go in the very back, but that is the bracket that holds on the coil packs. I'm going to slide that out of the way and then take the valve curve off and inspect. Okay, all these bolts are 10mm stud bolts. There's 5 of them. A couple of them have little wire harness holders. You can just pull those off, and then on this one here there's a little cap to protect the wire loom from getting worn out on that stud sticking out. I've taken the little clip out of there, release that, pull up on that, and pull that plug out of there, and now this whole assembly pulls back and slides out of the way. And now we can get at the 8mm bolt or heads that hold the valve cover on. 4 of those. To get this hose off the back here, let me zoom in on that a little bit. You have to push this tab out. That's the locking ring, and then you just pull up on it. Okay, with the valve cover off, now we can see what's going on here with these rocker arms. This one is tight. This one is tight. This one's tight. That one's tight. Oh, here we go. 1, 4, 6, and 7 are the DOD valves. Okay, so the next thing to do is we have to check to see if the valve has, or the lifter has damaged the cam. And to do that, we will have to pull off the head. So we're going to start with the bracket here for the alternator and pull that forward. And yeah, lots of stuff to do. Okay, next we're going to take the air intake out. 2 clamps, one here, one here. Little hose pops out, and I unclip this from this hose, and that whole assembly just, you pull up and forward and it comes out. Next we're going to remove the bracket that's bolted into the head. There's 1, 2, 3, and then down here you can see there's one more there. Pull those 4 bolts out. That's 15mm socket. Okay, I forgot, behind the power steering pump there's also a bolt here for that bracket. Remember, anytime you're working with electrical like this, disconnect the battery cable. Start with the negative, then do the positive. So 10mm nut done there. We're going to pull off to get this wire out of the way. Next, I've pulled the spark plug wires off of the spark plugs to get the whole assembly out of the way. Next, I've removed all the spark plugs so that when I work on the exhaust manifold, I don't end up breaking them off when that bumps into them, so they're out of the way. Next, I'm going to remove the bolts out of the exhaust manifold. Next, we're going to move this crossover line out of the way. 10mm bolt there. You probably have to use an open-end wrench to do this side. I'm just going to crack this side loose so that we can turn it, because we don't need to take that off all the way. Okay, that bolt's out. Now we should be able to... Ooh! I still have coolant in there. I guess I should drain the coolant now. Okay, the petcock is right down there at the driver's side bottom of the radiator. So we're going to loosen that up and drain the coolant. I opened it just a little bit, and they have conveniently placed it someplace where it doesn't actually want to go in one drain pan. It just goes everywhere and showers everything. So when you open up the top cap on the overflow reservoir, it'll allow the air to go in and drain a little bit faster. So we're just going to let this drain for a little bit. Okay, with the crossover removed, now I'm going to start on all the intake bolts. These are 8mm. Okay, next I just got a can sitting underneath there, propped up the intake so I can get at the top row bolts. Those are 10mm, and then we'll pull the head bolts. And I'm also going to remove this sensor because I have a habit of breaking them if I leave them in. On the back side of the cylinder head, there's also a bracket that's bolted into it. I can get at it with a box end wrench. I have a ratcheting one, so it'll make it a little bit easier. I hope I can get it out all the way. I ended up having to use a hammer on the end of the wrench to break that loose. But now I can get at the last bolt there. There's, I believe, 5 on the top row. There was 10 bolts holding the intake down. So make sure you get them all out before you start trying to pry on it. Next we're doing the head bolts. They're 15mm socket on those. They are stretch bolts, so you will need to replace them. You need to not reuse those, and there's 10 of those. So we'll go ahead and pull those out now. Next we're going to use a 8mm socket to get all these out so we can get the rocker bracket out of the way for the head bolts. With all the rocker arms removed, this bracket just sits in there. Also, I didn't show you earlier, but this I just moved out of the way. You can get out of the way. It's just a barbed fitting, so you wiggle it back and forth while pulling out on it, and then I just moved it, stuck it up there. Next I'll pull out all the push rods. Now I can get at the head bolts that were behind that rocker bracket, so we can pull all the head bolts out. They're 15mm head, and there's 10 of them. Well, it turns out I'm going to remove the exhaust manifold. So there's 3 bolts down below. I'm going to pull those out from underneath because it's too hard to get at the head bolts with the manifold in the way, and make everything easier anyway. Okay, I used 15 deep with a universal joint to get at these nuts. This is a Texas truck, so they weren't rusted, so if yours are rusted, you're probably going to want to use a torch and heat those up before you do this. Okay, with the exhaust manifold removed, these bolts are much easier to get access to. There's also a ground strap to the back of the head. I just removed it on this end, 10mm nut. As soon as I got the head off, I got some paper towels to get the coolant out of the cylinders, dry those out so that it doesn't go down in the oil. After we get this job done and start it up and running a while, we'll change the oil anyway, but I'd rather not have any coolant in there at all. So the head is off. Now we're going to inspect that lifter on cylinder 7. There is a 10mm head on the bolt holding the lifter alignment bracket. Okay, when I pulled the bracket out, cylinder 7 lifters, I'll show you here, they came right out, and as you can see, pulled out of the bracket, and as you can see, the exhaust has the spring expanded, the intake is compressed or collapsed. But this is a good sign here that the roller bearing is still nice and smooth. We'll also inspect the cam through the hole and make sure the cam looks good too. Here's another look at the roller bearing. It's kind of shiny, but that's a good thing. I turn it all the way. The only thing that's on here is oil. It's there's no damage to the roller, which I'm hoping is going to tell me that the camshaft is still good too. Looking at the camshaft through the hole, there are no ridges from where there would have been wear if the roller bearing had ruined the camshaft. Everything looks very shiny. It's hard to get a good picture because of the glare on it, but everywhere I look, it's a nice smooth surface. So we're gonna keep the cam. Natty! Natty, come! So you can actually get at the, it's hard to show, but you can get at the nut that's behind the oxygen sensor behind this panel if you got it. But I went and bought a set of crowfoot wrenches so I can get that nut off of there, because they put it right behind the oxygen sensor. Okay, on this side you can see also that there's a bracket to hold your hoses here after the first coil pack. To get the one out of the very back, I had to use a floppy ratcheting wrench, and then I got it out. These two bolts are conveniently hidden behind the dipstick tube, so you have to take the bracket off of there. 15mm bolt. Okay, so while I'm in here and I have the intake kind of propped forward with some weight on it to hold it in place, I can take my 1 16th inch wrench and get this little bugger out. So we're going to replace that and put a new one in there. And while you're taking that out, you also want to replace the filter. The VLOM, I believe it's called. This is for your variable timing also. This filter gets plugged up. You can see the bottom. I don't know if you can. Maybe I'll zoom it in a little bit. You can see the bottom there. Top is kind of clean, the bottom is very dirty. So this is an exhaust manifold bolt. You just screw that into the top a little bit, and then you can pull it out. When you put it back in, you want to put it back in so that it clamps down on that O-ring. Once you pushed it down in there, you'll feel a little click, and then you take your bolt out, and then the sensor goes in. Okay, I've applied a little bit of oil to this filter so that the ring, O-ring there, slides in, and then I put the exhaust bolt, screwed it in a little bit, and now we're going to push this in the hole. Okay, when putting these back together, you may wonder which way these things go. There's only one way for those to go in there, and on these buckets there's a notch. You can see right there, there's a notch, and there's also a notch on there. So there's only one way these can go in. Since the head gasket set comes with valve seals we're going to go ahead and replace those two. So with the heads off, you can't apply pressure to the cylinder, but you can use your rocker arm bolt and use this tool. This is a KD number 912. It's just a spring compressor, and you screw your bolt in by hand, and then you push down on this. And as you push down on this, you might want to give it a little tap with the hammer, and that loosens up the little clips. And then once you get the spring compressed, you can pull these little clips out. This is what they look like. So sometimes you might have to rotate them a little bit to get them out. And I use a magnet, and then while I'm pulling down on it, compressing it, then the magnet just snaps it out of there. Once you get the valve springs off, you just take a pair of pliers here and just grab these. Those are the valve seals, and then you can put the new ones on. FedEx just arrived, and the Felpro kit came, and it has these handy little sleeves that you can put over to protect your seals, so that when you push them over, they don't get cut on the, oops. And then I'm just using a socket. Where did my socket go? Here it is. And tapping it on the rest of the way. And on to the next one. They have different color for the intake and exhaust. These are the blue ones that go on the intake. I'm assuming they have a different heat tolerance. That's all there's to it. Okay, FedEx arrived, and I started installing these valve seals. So the kit comes with a nice little sleeve. It helps guide these valve seals over the stem so that they don't get pinched. And then I just use a socket to tap it on the rest of the way. That's all there is to installing these. Just remember, you got intake and exhaust, they're different. Okay, putting the springs back in, there's a tapered edge. The tapered smaller side goes toward the top, and then the washer goes on top of that. And then we use this tool again to compress that spring, and then these clips go in with the larger diameter toward the top, and you have to make sure they both seat around the valve stem. And how do you tell which valve is exhaust? If you feel in here, that's the exhaust manifold bolts on there. You can feel in there, and you can also tell because the exhaust is smaller than the intake. Okay, replacing these little grommets here, these valve cover, you can cut them. Like that. And then I just take a needle nose, grab a hold of them. They get pretty old and dry rotted, so just kind of break them out of there like that. And then on the new ones, you'll want to just slide them over the end of the washer, and then once you get them on there, then you just push the whole assembly in rotate it around a little bit until it pops through. Did get the engine back together. I test drove it. The ticking clatter sound is gone. Still have a little issue with the oil pressure, which seems to be pretty common with these also.